Okay, welcome everybody to this episode of Breaking Absolutes. I want to remind folks before we get rolling, if you like what we're doing here, follow us, subscribe to the channel. Our goal here is to have guests on the show that are doing so much inside the rock and metal genre that we feel like it's important to draw attention to their work. We think it deserves a broader audience. Not simply because of the musicianship, but we think the music itself can and should speak to a larger audience. And so my efforts here to dimensionalize these musicians, to kind of go hopefully deeper into some of the other kinds of things they do, in addition to everything we know about them that makes them kind of beloved. So with that in mind, today I get to talk to Joel Hoekstra. And I've got, I think, kind of a fun story about how I found out about this guy that I'll tell when we get him on camera so that I can embarrass the hell out of him. But before we get to that, let me just frame up a little bit for folks who, I know a lot of you will know Joel, but I want to frame a little bit about the musician he is. Folks, of course, will know him, I think, from his time with Night Ranger. He's currently guitarist in Whitesnake. And all of these, by the way, all of these areas we'll explore in more depth. I just kind of want to give a broad stroke. He tours with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I'm going to make sure he keeps me honest, but I believe he's got at least one. He's on one of their records, the most recent Christmas record. He's played with Cher, has toured with Cher. He's also maybe a little bit lesser known for some of his theater work, at least his early theater work, but he's worked as a working musician in theater, which is really cool. We're going to talk about that. And he's, as a consequence of the work that he's done across theater and as a touring musician and as a composing musician, where we'll spend a lot of time. He's had appearances on a number of TV programs, The Tonight Show, that metal show, which is actually where I got to know Joel, which is kind of a funny story. And then literally the list is too long of the named musicians that he's collaborated with or played on their records. And we'll talk about some of them. But just to name a few, he's played with Jeff Scott Soto. He's played with Amy Lee. He's played with Michael Sweet. And there's some forthcoming work there that we want to talk about. He's played on a number of really important tributes. And I think it says something about him as a musician that he's asked to participate in tributes to our most important, early sort of icons and folks who broke out on the scene. And then, of course, he's got a bunch of solo work. And I spent a bunch of time going deeper into Joel's solo work, which was a revelation to me. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but I'm going to talk to him about some of his early work, which I think is criminally under sort of recognized or shared. So we're going to share it here. So anyway, with that as the setup, let me bring Joel on and we'll talk to the man himself. Joel, welcome.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I was grateful to you. You'd spend some time with us. I spoke with a guy that you've had on your records, Russell Allen, recently, and in prep for that, I was listening to some of your most recent Joel's Hoekstra 13 record, and I thought, I'm just going to reach out and see if if you'd be interested in coming on. So that was the genesis of this conversation. But the interesting thing about it, how I learned about you, this was back in the day when you were on That Metal Show. You were a guest guitarist, and you came on. You were on a show with Corey Glover and Vernon Reed and Morgan Rose, and you came. He would have you. Eddie would have you do some intro and some playouts to breaks, and you did some really amazing sort of tapping, 8-finger tapping. But then you came in after one of those breaks and you brought an acoustic guitar, and I fell in love with you as a guitarist with what you did in that, 30 seconds. So I went and looked you up, and that opened up to me so much of the rest of your work, and it's something we'll come back to, I think, in some of your other work. But I just wanted to share with the folks that this sort of dimension of you that's beyond just I think what we know about you, and we'll get more into that. So that's my introduction to Joel Hoekstra, how I got to know you. let me ask you before we kind of get rolling on some of the music stuff. I've been following you. This COVID break obviously is a bummer in a lot of ways, but you've stayed extraordinarily busy. Is that your normal routine, or has this been different for you in terms of workload?
Yeah, well, it's different in terms of what type of work for sure. It's definitely been, for me, a lot of teaching. Like I've been teaching 32 students a week during this, which I haven't done since I was a younger guy. I taught a lot. That's what kind of, bought me my time in music, was to be able to teach guitar and then support it with gigs. So in a way, I'm kind of back to that right now. Just, different landscape these days, in this day and age. I'm doing it all sitting right here, but yeah, doing that and lots of sessions because everybody's been recording. So I got a lot of people that want me to play a solo on their songs or whatever, and or fully play all the guitar tracks on their songs. That's all good. So lots of that, doing the cameo thing, that's all been the stuff that's really kind of paid the bills and kind of kept me on my guitar, and doing the whatever you call them these days, virtual jams, collabs. I've done a ton of those during this to just kind of stay out there. And, Ken Tamplin, who I did one for recently, used the term digital presence. It's good to have a strong digital presence. And I thought, I like that term. It makes sense. I mean, I was saying it's just to stay out there. Do those things, and people are watching a ton while they're at home. I mean, some of those videos that I've done are 400,000 views at this point in time, and more than I got for my songs out for my new album. So I mean, my thing is to just be productive every day, and then just see where that takes me. Because that's how I got to this point, so I'm not really going to change that whole mentality. But I definitely believe in working hard to make things happen. All that stuff together, I would say I'm busier than when I tour in a lot of ways. But it's just been different. It's just a different type of busy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Particularly, I wanted a call back on one of your comments there around these collaborations. There's a halo effect on some of them because they're often covers. So you're drawing in your fans, but you're also drawing a lot of fans of the cover. And I've watched a bunch of them, and they're smoking. People should check them out. At the end, Joel, we'll include a link to your website, which has I think a pretty strong enumeration of.
Most of them are on there. Yeah.
Yeah. They're very good. They're all like top notch, and they're so much fun. There's this it's a professional recording, and you guys are all professional players, but there's also a little bit of I don't know, there's a casualness about it, like an invitation in it, because it's from home, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think trying to look at the silver lining and all this stuff, I mean, that's definitely one of them, to be able to work with people who I haven't been able to work with before and do it in a low pressure, if not no pressure environment, because working with Arnell from Journey, it's not like I'm trying to get him to put out an album with me and start a band or anything like that, so there's no, it's not even a commercial release. It's just something for the fans. It's something fun, but it gives us an opportunity to work together for a minute. We've been friends for a long time, and that's Arnell, Billy Sheehan on that same track, and work with Dino Jalusic on a few of these videos. Who Dino, I go back to TSO with him, but we've never had an opportunity to even tour together. He usually does the West touring band, and I do the East. So work with Dino a little bit on this stuff. Mike Portnoy on a couple of those videos with Dino, and reconnect with Virgil Donati on one of them. So a lot of people who I just feel like working with, and for me, I think it's great because it just gives everybody an opportunity to do that, and nobody can really say anything. You're not starting a new band. You're not putting out I'm not in 85 bands putting out albums. We're just having fun. Okay. So I think there's some things that came out of this whole weird era that we're in, I still technically in right now, that at least for me, I haven't really begun real touring yet. So I try to think of like what are the positives that came out of it. That definitely would be one of them.
Yeah,
Nico McBrain, I forgot to mention, working with Nico on Jen Majura's jam. So the opportunity to this wouldn't have happened without this current situation. Everybody would have been on the road, and there would have been no way you would have gotten people to do these things. So
yeah, I think it's really good cross pollination, because there's, you know, the usually a bunch of musicians that have a following. I think it's really healthy for you know, and for the fans to help them stay connected to you guys while you can't be on tour.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a different place with that than a lot of the fans. A lot of the fans want to see people be in one band, and you know, it's the
Yeah.
band, and but you know, I think it's a different business these days. Number one, it's almost impossible to work 10, 11 months out of the year with one band. So unless you want musicians to sit around for 8, 9 months a year or whatever, you know, it does take multiple things, and that's before COVID. That's not a COVID thing. It's been that way for a while. So, and also, I think, you know, our fans are older now, and they understand. It's like we're not 21 years old, got signed to a big deal, and we're taking it as far as we can at this point. We're musicians who have made a name for ourselves, playing with various bands, and so you know, I'm into all that stuff. Now, a lot of the fans are not. They wish it was like, you know, and I get that, but it just is what it's a product of the music business these days. So for me, my whole thing is that stay productive and work hard. So whatever avenue I have that can give me that opportunity to work with my guitar and be a productive person in what I'm doing, then that's, you know, for me, that's a positive thing. I can't see a negative in that.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that kind of, I thought about this before, this idea that a lot of the fans, so to speak, they become really attached to a particular group, versus, you know, attached to the musician or the various ways that they express their music. And it's one of the reasons I like doing the show, because I like taking some time to go back and um, look at all the things the musician does. And a guy like you has a lot of variety. And I think it's, I don't know, I'm optimistic that sharing more of the various ways that a musician expresses themselves and has to frankly kind of earn their way, because there's not a lot of them that tour for 2 or 3 months and then they have plenty of money to just sit around. Um, Sharing that.
Yeah, it's been that's definitely the, I guess the summary of my path, right? I got out of GIT and Nirvana hit. And that was, you know, it was like a nuclear bomb on any kind of like, well, you're going to be a guitar hero kind of guy or whatever. Not that I was really even ready for that. I was only 19, 20 years old at the time, and pretty green, you know. So I think that was the best thing that happened to me in a lot of ways. It set me off on a career of making a living with my guitar however I could to be valuable. So whether that was teaching all those lessons that I did back then in my 20s, I told you I was teaching 70 students a week back then.
Oh, wow.
But all kinds of gigs, you know, playing with singer-songwriters and you know, I did all kinds of things to get through those times, man. Playing in wedding bands and playing classical guitar at parties and playing jazz guitar at parties, and you know, I mean, just like you name it. So, but what that did is it made me a more well-rounded musician than say a lot of the guys who got a deal when they were 19 years old and were on MTV, and then they were just them the rest of their life. I had to really kind of grind the entire way. So it definitely made me more well-rounded and more able to play different styles and things like that. Now, you could make an argument, you know, that the guy who was 19 that got signed and stuck to his thing is more identifiable, and that might be the case, you know. But it is what it is, you know. I just like to say I'm not, you know, I'm not I guess in need of feeling like my path is the better one. It just is that's just the path that I had to go, you know. I mean, trust me, I would have preferred the lots of money at 19 years old, you know, on MTV and everything. But in a lot of ways, it's the best thing ever happened to me.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're kind of delineating there. There's plenty of acts that kind of hit it hard and got big, and they either choose to stay kind of in that track where it's just them and the band, and there's a sort of romance that fans have around that, versus guys who either by necessity want to do more, or just because I know a lot of musicians who they get restless if they don't get to do other things, different kinds of music. So it's not always, I think, just about, you know, there's only one way to make money. And I don't know that it's that way for you, but I think I don't know, not to overstate it, but I think it's really healthy for fans to kind of be able to see a guy like you and learn more about you versus, some people probably only know you as the TSO guy. They haven't explored some of your other stuff. Some may only really know you from Whitesnake or other things. And so today we're going to spend some time on a lot of Joel Hoekstra, if that's cool with you.
Sure.
There's a lot of great music there. Before we do, though, I just want to dip into your past real quick. In my reading, I kind of learned that you came from your parents or someone in your family. There was like classical influence. Is this right?
Yeah, my parents, both of them. So they definitely started me out early on cello and then piano, and like a lot of little boys, I was just kind of like, hey man, I just want to play baseball. I don't even like this, what I'm doing, And so it really wasn't until I was 11 and heard AC/DC and saw Angus Young that I was like, hey, I want to play guitar. And I think my parents were like, great. I think they were picturing Segovia or something, And next thing they knew, I had the home stereo fully cranked, playing Paranoid, and anyway, yeah, great fun.
You one of the things I read is a real early influence was Angus Young, and I think I saw a nod to that in the motion graphic video for off of your most recent record. You had a single, right? And there's a part, I don't know if that's supposed to, I think it's you because it looks like the character in the video is you, but there's a point where you're on your bed and you're playing and there's Angus Young posters.
Could you tell it was me because of my wings right now? Is that how you knew it was me?
It's a really cool video.
Yeah. So that's like, based on a true story, the video, but yeah, I would say definitely seeing Angus Young. But back then it wasn't like guitar players. You didn't talk about that. You're like, I like AC/DC. It wasn't even, I don't even know if I knew Angus Young's name at first, I mean, it was just like AC/DC. You like the songs, and I loved his whole vibe, his whole like energetic vibe. As a kid, you see that and you're like, I want to be that. Like, that's what I want to do. That dude's the coolest. And so anyway, that still holds true. I'm still marvel at that guy, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing all the years, all the world tours, and never seen 5 seconds of footage of him taking it easy on stage.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And there must be times where he felt like just death, from travel or whatever, you're going on. It's remarkable that there's never been a time you look at him and he's just standing there going like, oh, when's this gig over?
Yeah, he always gives it his all.
He always gives it his all.
It's good. Okay, let's kind of move into you had this classical training. You had this, the parents were bringing you up and teaching you a bunch of stuff. You played some cello, then you picked up guitar. Where did you turn the corner where this kind of like, it became more than like a young guy's passion and like, this is really what I'm going to go do?
Yeah, I don't know if that moment ever happened. I think like as soon as I started learning the rock stuff, it happened, like I think I just kind of went, well, I guess I'll do this, and if it doesn't work out, I'll do something else. But I just kind of never stopped.
Yeah.
So so I like to say that was the last career decision I ever made. Really, was when I was 11, because I mean it was like, yeah, I like this. I guess I'll do this, and that was kind of it, and I just did an awful lot of it.
Did you what was the first? What would you? I read through a bunch of your background, but what would you consider like your first, like, I don't know, breakthrough part? Was it when you got into Love Janis, or was there something before that felt like you'd kind of reached a new altitude with your career?
All of it. There's just been a lot of those moments. So that's the way it works, I think, at least it did for me, where you're just constantly taking one small step forward. I always say you don't go from practicing in your parents' basement to being in U2 or something like that, to like, the biggest band in the world. It doesn't really work that way. You have to climb one step of the way. But I would say, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them, joining Kathy Richardson's band locally in Chicago. It was the first time I was playing like, bigger shows around there and making good money on shows and going like, wow, cool. Like, people actually wanted their picture with me tonight and they wanted my autograph on the CD, and it was cool stuff. And then playing with Jim Peterick around there too, and that was really led to me being a night ranger. He would have these world stage events where a lot of his friends would come sing their hits, and so I got to be in the backup band every one of those. And that was kind of an annual thing, like once a year, maybe twice. And so I got to back up Rick Emmett on that, and Don Barnes from 38 Special, Kip Winger, Alan Parsons, Kevin Cronin from REO. I mean, there's a really long list of people that I got to play guitar for in there. And then one of them was Kelly Kagi from Night Ranger. He pretty much was there every year. So we do the Night Ranger stuff, and that eventually led to me getting an opportunity with them. So that was a big deal for me, getting Love Janis, because that was the first time I was a full-time performer and stopped teaching. And that was at 30, so it took me all the way to age 30 to be like, wow, I'm just gigging. And so doing 8 shows a week in New York for those couple years, definitely that was big. And then I joined the Turtles and Big Brother and the Holding Company and started doing fly dates and tour, and that was the first time I'd really kind of gone around on a regular basis. Like, oh, I'm going to this city, I'm going to this city. And anyway, that was a big deal to me in its own way. And definitely joining scrap metal, Kelly kind of was a part of as well, and that also really helped me get into Night Ranger. So I was playing with him and the Nelson Twins and Mark Slaughter in that band, and then that really led to Night Ranger, which certainly that was a big one in terms of like a change in life. And yeah, everything, it's just been like that the entire way, man. You could follow that all the way to where I am today. It's just kind of been like one thing after another where it feels like the next step.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I want to use the phrase, but there's this journeyman work ethic in you where you just I read about this as I was getting to know you better through some of your other interviews and stuff. But there's and it's not, which isn't to say, by the way, that all musicians or many musicians don't work hard, but man, there was just this persistence in your career. Like, you've earned everything that you've gotten, in my view. Like, you're now with some of the very biggest bands on the planet. But they're, it wasn't an overnight success. But that's to your credit, I think.
Yeah, I would say all of it kind of came from moments where you'd go like, why would you ever do that? And that's like every opportunity happened from doing things like in Jim's band and Peterick's band, where I mentioned doing the world stage thing. I would learn 36, 37 songs even when I was still in New York doing Love Janis, to fly back and do those world stage shows on no rehearsal. So I'd have to memorize. I was playing 8 shows a week in Love Janis, and I'd get home every night and I'd run the 36 songs, which is like good 3 hours or something like that, of at least, without rewinding or anything like that, for weeks before I'd go in and do that. And that, I mean, I can't even imagine what I was making an hour at that point, and it's not that Jim didn't pay well, but it's like, it is what it is when you do things like that. I mean, I was probably making 25 cents an hour or something like that to do that. It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
by the time you're all is said and done. So, but that led to my opportunity in Night Ranger. So that, getting Rock of Ages happened from subbing on pit stuff around New York here, where I'd spend 3 weeks getting a whole book down to go in and maybe sub and make, a couple $100. Weeks of work to same type of deal, where you go like, oh, I must have been making like 50 cents an hour for that. Stuff like that, where you're like, why would you ever subject yourself to that? But you do it for the opportunities and to kind of build forward. And I mean, I'm still that way when it comes to work. It's definitely, I think, important to get paid when you work, but it's more important to work, Like, if you don't have anything going on, that's my advice to everybody when people are like, how did you get where you go? And it's like, well, you just start working, and when you're busy enough, then people have to pay you because you have other things you need to do.
Yeah.
If somebody starts to pay you because you're doing this, well, then they need to either pay you more or you need to do that. You're not just like sitting on the couch going, no, I don't want to do that. It doesn't pay enough. and then like watching TV. It's like I couldn't really think of like anything better I had to do in my life than work at that stuff. So I did it, and that it definitely paid off without a doubt.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Um, when you were in Night Ranger, you were in with Red Beach for a while, right? And then
No, Reb was doing the gig. So they parted ways with Jeff Watson, and Reb did the gig for, I'd say, a little over a year, maybe 2 years with them, a year and a half, something like that. And I basically, the first time I filled in with them was filling in for Reb.
oh, okay.
Because Reb was doing it but needed to miss a show. And they said that Kelly went to the band. They were maybe going to have to cancel this show. And Kelly said, I know this guy that plays the Peterick, plays our stuff. He can do the 8-finger thing. He learns like 36 songs for Jim's set and comes in on no rehearsal and plays the gig down. We don't need to rehearse them. We don't need to just show up. And so that was my audition.
Well,
was a gig.
we have a lot of aspiring musicians that listen to the channel and to the podcast, and not that maybe this hasn't been said before, but you do all of this work for opportunities you're talking about. You created the reputation. You just described it. On reputation, someone knew that they could have you come do the gig and have confidence that it would go well. That's really important. Putting in the time and so it paid dividends. It was a slow burn. What do they call it? Delayed gratification, something like that. But in any case, but then from there, maybe I'm trying to draw like correlations that aren't real. But Reb went over to Whitesnake. You went with Whitesnake. Did he help bridge that gap, or was that still a separate sort of jump?
No, a separate jump. Reb was in Whitesnake when he did the year or so with Night Ranger. I think that Whitesnake, David took some time off, or like 1 year off or something like that. And so that was Reb going to them and going like, hey, I can do it. Whitesnake's not doing anything this year, that kind of thing. And they knew, and when I filled in for Reb, they were saying that, oh, he's going to have to go back to Whitesnake. And so when I joined, at that point, I was with them 7 years. So me joining Whitesnake was long after that. Like I was 7 years with Night Ranger, and then Reb still was with Whitesnake that entire time. He's the longest standing member of Whitesnake ever, Reb Beach is. A lot of people don't think of Reb Beach as the very first, like band member of Whitesnake to come to mind, but he should be, really. I mean, he's been with the band longer than anybody. Anyway, I can see the Blabbermouth quote no on that. Anyway, yeah. So Reb was in Whitesnake for a while, and I did when I heard that Doug was leaving or left, and I sent some video links to Reb and asked him if he could get him to David, and he did. And I didn't hear anything at first, and then I just kind of still kind of had I guess part of me went like, well, surely I can at least get an audition. I just went like, come on now, you're going to tell me I can't get an audition? So I thought, who knows Dave? Who would know David that he would listen to? And I happened to think about Phil Carson because I had filled in for Mick Jones and Foreigner, and right. 2011 Phil manages Foreigner, and Dee Snider. So Dee Snider was around Rock of Ages. He was in Rock of Ages, right? So Phil was around. We knew each other. I filled in Foreigner on very short notice and did a good job for them. And so he recommended me to David and said, you should give this guy a shot. And that really was what got me in the door and got me the audition. I think coupled with the fact that Reb, had good things to say as well. I think if Reb was like, no, then David probably would have listened to him. So anyway, I got in there, got an audition, and things went really well. I've always gotten along with David from the moment we met. He's like got on great. And the audition went really well and got the opportunity. And so now it's been 7 years with Whitesnake, amazingly. Right. So time flies.
Yeah. Well, I think you're kind of reaching that point where, in the same way you talk about Reb being maybe deserving to be identified as a Whitesnake sort of hallmark, I think you've reached that. At least that's my opinion and perception.
I'm not really deserving of that. I mean, it's great to be a tiny part of the band's history, and I'm joking in saying that because I can hear about Reb because I can hear the people going, "What about Sykes? He wrote all the hit songs," and that's totally it's 100% true. I'm just making a point that Reb has been with the band longer than anybody, which is kind of people don't realize that sometimes. But anyway,
you don't like you're. I appreciate the humility and on all of that, but as a fan, I think I can say like I love John Sykes. I love that era. I was part of my sort of
I that's what I grew up on, man. I grew up on that era of Whitesnake, of Sykes and Vi, and that's so. Of course, I could never. Those guys were there at the peak of it, and I just treat it professionally, man, and do the best I can with everything. That's all, and I think that's what David wants at this point. He doesn't want guys ego tripping and sure. This is my band kind of vibe and all that craziness. It's like I just got like to go in there and have a good time, as does David, and work the best I can and do the best job I can. That's how I approach it. I just approach it professionally, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's what I think. I think that because you take that approach, these sort of the humility, that sort of, because you still show up with great showmanship, and you've got the chops, but it kind of comes through. I mean, so when you see a Whitesnake show now, even at least this is my experience. Even though I was there when Sykes was playing and it was all great, there's a chemistry and something really cool about the show you guys put on now and the music you're making now. And and I'll defend that to anybody. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is on the most recent record, you've got some songwriting credits. I think there's 6 or 7 tracks that you helped write. Am I accurate there?
Yeah. And then there was a song that ended up on the rock album that was an outtake from it as well. So I got 8 co-writes with David, and I was thrilled that he included me in that, and that's super cool of him, and really nice. And so it was a lot like the rest of our interactions. It went really well, just kind of we had fun, quick. David writes real fast. So
there's a track.
It went really well. Now I think I'd been in the band now for 4 years or something like that, 3-4 years by the time we got down to doing that. So it was, by then we knew each other. It would have been a little scary to like join the band and be like the next day I'm doing that with him. But I felt like we totally knew each other. So if there was something I did that he didn't dig, there was no, he didn't have to say like, act like he liked it or anything like that. He just be like, no, not that one. And me go laugh and go, okay, cool. How about this? And, so clear lines of communication, that's always the best way to go with that kind of stuff, right? And he's great with that. And he's a very positive guy. He's really good at just spreading positive energy within the camp and within people. When you hang with David, it always feels positive. It never feels negative.
Yeah. Well, I want to I do want to give a shout out that one of the tracks on that, which might have a little bit of a different sound for Whitesnake, but it's called After All. It's kind of an acoustic number, and man, that is an amazing song, dude. Like that's the as odd as it may be, that's the first thing that I co-wrote with David, because I never in my life would have pictured. It shows how weird the music business can be sometimes, because he was putting out Unzipped, the acoustic compilation, and he had me out doing some of that stuff, and he showed me his idea on that, and I think I wrote like the intro and the instrumental section and maybe the B section to it. I can't remember offhand, but a couple of the sections basically, right? Yeah.
And just the bed, not the singing and the lyrics. But I just thought, I think at that point he was like, "That's really cool. I want to put that on the next album instead of this." And I went like, "Okay, really? Wow, okay, that's awesome." But it just shows like, I mean, that's kind of a Beatlesy finger piece that David had. Really, David writes on this little nylon string, right? And he plays like this. Okay. So he says, "I have this idea," and I could tell what he was approximating out with the finger style. So it's all emulating him, really.
Yeah.
And anyway, just funny how that is sometimes. Like, people picture on the first thing you wrote with David's going to be this thundering "Still of the Night" kind of thing or something, right? And it's like that was actually this like Beatlesy finger-style acoustic thing. So I mean, you just never know, man. You never know the way things are going to go. But you obviously look at it all like a blessing, right? I mean, it's like, hey, that's amazing. I got to, and obviously a lot of the stuff we did come together on the album was rock stuff.
It's a great album. It really is. It's really strong. That track just surprised me a little bit. And you guys, I mean, the chemistry you came together, if you were both sort of contributing to it, it's man, I don't know, it's stuck with me. And I wanted to give you some props for part of the writing on that particular tune.
Cool, thanks, man.
So we've heard some about sort of farewell tour. Is there any? Is it too soon to know anything about a Whitesnake tour?
Yes. I think the only thing that's online is the Hellfest date, and that's the only, and that's pretty much when you're in the band, you basically know what you guys know, okay. And so. But, we talk with David every day. He texts us every day. There's a good keeping in touch. We just don't discuss that stuff until it's like the proper time. But, that's I know he's been eyeing doing a farewell tour and been keeping his fingers crossed on being able to do so with everything that we've been dealing with the last year and a half or so. So, continue. I just keep saying fingers crossed all the time, man. I'm hoping we can get back out there and, just enjoy all the guys in the lineup, man. We've been together now, that lineup, the whole time that I've been in the band. So as much as people joke about turnover and Whitesnake, we've had the same lineup now for 7 years with me in the band. So, we got a cool little, cool chemistry, because you got guys like Tommy Aldridge, who are like David, that rock royalty kind of thing, where he's, obviously, played with Ozzy in the heyday, and it's and then you got guys like myself who are just kind of like worked their way into the gig and, and super happy to be there. And so we come from all different places, man, but we all get along, and we got a cool vibe in that camp.
I don't, I'm of the opinion, I don't think it does any disservice to years past or players past for there to be this cool chemistry, and for Whitesnake to have this incarnation that's still writing great songs and still, I think, doing credit to, songs that many of us grew up. So all the more power to you guys. I look forward to seeing you on tour when that thing finally can come around. And speaking of that, like one of the big places you spend some time each year for at least 2-3 months is with TSO. There've been no announcements about that. But I wanted to, I was talking to Russell the other day on the show, and he told me this story. I think he was with Jeff Scott Soto, and they were watching you, and they saw you performing. And Russ told me, he leaned over, he said, "Man, that guy belongs in TSO. He's had the presence and had the chops." So it made me start to think, and I couldn't find the answer to this, is how that particular gig landed, how you landed that gig.
No, I mean, I was in TSO, I'd say, for 4 years before Russ came in. I said,
what was he talking about? I have to go back.
I joined in 2010. So Alex Skolnick was the regular guitar player with Chris Caffrey out east, and then Alex, I believe, he wanted to take his jazz trio out. They got a tour that was somebody, I forget who it was now off the top of my head, but he was going to head out with that, and so that led to at least a 1-year opening in it. And I just auditioned. I had a couple friends in the band put my name forward, and I auditioned with Al Petrelli first, who's the music director, and then with Paul O'Neill, who's obviously the founder, creator, and mastermind. Rest in peace, Paul. And they were both kind enough to give me the thumbs up and give me the gig. And that for me, that was amazing at the time, but it was also something that was a little like troubling, because I had joined Night Ranger in 2008, and then I got Rock of Ages added in 2008. Now those two worked together because I could sub out of Rock of Ages whenever I needed to on Broadway to go play with Night Ranger. But now when you get TSO, you go, hey man, that's 2 months out of the year where I got to sub out of Night Ranger. So like, you know, what's going to happen there? And so, you know, thankfully the universe has a way of making all these things work out. You know, Carrie Kelly was usually coming in for me in November, December. And so when I left the band, that was the natural progression to have Carrie come into Night Ranger. So, you know, it's just funny how these things just kind of, they all work themselves out. You know, it's like, it feels terrifying at the time. It's like, oh my God, I got to do that. And, you know, those guys are going to kill me. And, you know, but they were cool, and I was able to juggle all three of those. I'd say Rock of Ages, Night Ranger, and TSO 2010 through 2014 until I joined Whitesnake. And so for a while there, it was Rock of Ages, TSO, and Whitesnake. And then Rock of Ages closed, and it became TSO and Whitesnake. And then I added Cher when David took a year off for knee surgery. So it's kind of the same deal as Reb going in and joining Night Ranger for that year, except my Cher experiment lasted like a few years, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, it was supposed to be just a few gigs, and it turned out to be much more. So anyway, yeah.
I think I had my thing backwards. I think when Russ saw you, he thought it was not TSO. He thought, man, that guy would be great in Whitesnake. I think that's what he's told me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, it was just a flavor. It was just a little bit of flavor.
That would make sense because I was in Night Ranger when Russ joined. When Russ joined TSO, I was in Night Ranger. So
and you guys have always been together on the East Coast tour, right?
Russ came into the East Band, and that's really how we hooked up for my first album with him. What I call Joel Hoekstra's 13, which is just, I call it that because it doesn't sound like a guitar player solo album. It doesn't sound like an instrumental album. Yeah. And I'm not singing. It kind of sounds more or less like a band when you listen to that stuff. So I wanted to give it a project name, but also make it something that clearly showed it's my thing. So hence the name Joel Hoekstra's 13, the eternal confusion over the name. But that's the name of the project. And then the albums have been named Dying to Live and Running Games, which just came out earlier this year.
And I'm going to get to those, but if you'll permit me, before we do, I'd like to talk about your first three records, your solo records, just a little bit.
Sure.
So Undefined, which came out in 2000, as I see, it's got some like really cool jazzy, funky, bluesy flavors to it. It's an instrumental record. Did you have like any sort of proclivity or love for like progressive music early on? Because even in The Moon Is Falling, like, I'm a big Dream Theater fan, and there's sections of that I just know Dream Theater fans would love if they could hear it or have heard it.
Yeah, a lot of that came from my influence from one of my early teachers, TJ Helmrich, and he had a partner that they put out a couple albums together with named Brett Garcid, and those guys are both amazing players and good friends of mine, and because of their influence, you know, definitely very influenced by the I'd say rock fusion scene. Yeah. And the TJ had the job heading the recording department at Musicians Institute. So he was able to help me with recording those albums as well. So what happened, he was instrumental in a lot of that stuff happening, I mean, Undefined and The Moon Is Falling, because not only could he help me out with recording the stuff and mixing the stuff for me, you know, on an SSL and like a real deal studio, but also the connection with the musicians, with Virgil Donati and Rick Fiorabracci, because they were backing him and Brett up on some a live show when I was out in LA, and I got to sit at their rehearsals and jam with those guys a bit. And I think Brett couldn't make sound check for the gig, and I had to do sound check for him and knew some of their stuff. And so that was basically when Virgil and Rick said, you know, you sound great. If you ever have anything you want us to record. And then I thought, wow, I should really do that. You know, I was doing like local gigs in Chicago, and I just seemed to, sorry, I got some stupid update thing popping up on my screen. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Windows.
So, yeah, I mean, geez. Anyway, leave me alone. So where was I with all that? Yeah, so I thought, you know, I should probably do that. And so, and TJ said, you absolutely should, dumbass. So anyway, I took whatever musical ideas I had at the time, which on Undefined, some of that is I was playing in a residency in an acid jazz band, kind of
Oh,
funky. And
wow.
so I just, whatever I had at the time, I just laid down and thought, let's just do it. I didn't have a lot of the odd meter stuff that Virgil is known for playing or anything like that. So it's one of the few albums you can actually hear Virgil playing 4/4 time, basically the entire album. It's amazing. And those don't know Virgil, I mean, he's insane. The guy has, he's more proficient on the drums than just about anybody on any instrument on the planet. I mean, he's just insane. So anyway, getting to do the record with those guys was awesome. And then The Moon Is Falling, I followed up, kind of going more along the lines of what I thought people would expect from Virgil. More odd meter stuff, a little bit heavier, but lots of weird sounds on that one. I went less with the funky stuff and more with the, like, let's rock with weird sounds, not the standard, like, 7-string, like lots of distortion kind of instrumental guy. I was trying to go with something that was different, and not sure if I achieved that, but I think it's aged pretty well. You can listen to that album, and it's even though it was out in 2003, it doesn't sound like, oh my God, it sounds like it dated or anything like that. It sounds still just kind of weird when you listen to it.
I think they both age really well. I listened to them just in the past couple of days. And I'm recommending folks who hear this, who maybe haven't explored back far enough to get into some of your solo records, to do it. They're really
Yeah, they won't listen to it, man. Trust me, I've tried. I've been through the many phases of going, maybe I'll post a song every day from those records on YouTube, and I'll see them get like 12 likes, and then I'll post like a snippet of me playing Still of the Night, get like
million, yeah.
1,500 likes on Facebook, and it's like, yeah, okay, nobody cares about the old instrumental stuff for sure. But it's all good, man. I look at it like it's all part of the legacy and part of the story. It's not trying to be anything other than just what my path was getting here.
Well, there are definitely people who dig that kind of music. So if anything we do helps get it to them, I think I will feel good about that. Your third record is Acoustic Tunes. I fell in love with this record. 13 acoustic songs. I was there was a bunch of the artists from the Wyndham Hills label that it was kind of called New Age, but some of it was just really beautiful instrumental music. And some of what you did there really reminded me of it. I don't know how your fans who just love you for the big metal stuff have heard this record, but it's really good.
So around that era, I think, the shred thing was kind of really, really dead. And I was doing a lot of writing with people in town here and just trying to find ways to keep getting better on guitar without it being, sweeping arpeggios or tapping and stuff like that. So, a lot of that stuff is just me on my acoustic guitar, like hanging out at home and writing stuff, putting myself in an alternate tuning and writing a song in it. And then basically I just got to a point where I had a lot of it, and I thought, I should really record it and just make an album out of this stuff so it's at least documented. And that's all that really is. I never really pushed that album, and it was kind of a weird album because it's kind of almost, I guess, what people would describe as easy listening, which is kind of an odd thing to think about from the guitar player in Whitesnake, but I just felt like it needed to be like recorded because it was what I was playing at the time. And so I recorded the passes of the, me playing the pieces, and then I overdubbed on top of it. So, you got percussion on there and a bass and mandolin or whatever I decided to overdub with on there at various times. But yeah, I mean, I like it, man. And I still actually, oddly enough, play that stuff on the Monsters of Rock cruise during my hangover jam every year. That's the set kind of begins with a few of those while everybody's starting to have their free Bloody Marys, courtesy of me. And then once everybody's drunk, I bring Russell up and we rock,
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's
I think it's a cool side of you. I'm glad that you documented those songs because as much as you're celebrated for being an axe slinger and a shredder in other ways, and we're about to just talk about some of that stuff on your Joel Hoekstra's 13. This is a beautiful side of you, and I don't mean that to sound maudlin. It's they're I said the same thing to Jordan Rudess the other day. He did a record just like this. It's just piano stylings, and it's really soft and just beautiful. There's no attempt to try and flash you with an arpeggio, or some big run. And I think it's really great. I'm glad we got that music from you. But now let's talk about the most recent stuff. So over the past, I guess, 6 years, you've got 2 records under Joel Hoekstra's 13. You mentioned them before, Dying to Live and Running Games. For folks who don't know, like, this is almost a who's who. You've got such great players who wanted to participate. Some of them were your TSO family, it looks like.
Yeah, Russell, and then Chloe, Jeff Scott Soto. So yeah, there's definitely TSOs represented. Sorry, Adam and Kenny. I'm apologizing to management.
Well, it's these are I think they've been described as classic rock or classic hard rock, and that's true. But there's a quote I saw somewhere, but with 20th century muscle or something, and that helps explain it. The music is really, yes, it harkens back to a lot of that stuff we loved from the 70s and 80s, but it's got a heart all its own. And I did the same thing. I had heard a bunch of this stuff because you have a guy, I think, that did your motion graphic video, who is a common friend, and he had, when he was putting it together, he let me see it. And so I'd heard some of this record, but I went back and started listening to it. Man, it just scratches every itch you have from that era that we grew up loving music. And so I wanted to talk about some of this, as you know, as our last segment here before I let you go. And maybe let's go to Running Games, because this is most recent. Actually, this record released officially earlier this year, right?
Yeah, January.
Yeah.
I believe. Hopefully, hopefully I have that right.
Well, and before we get to the music, one of the things that I kind of struck me is that as much as there's all of the bombast and the great musicianship, and the sort of the thrill of a really great heavy rock band, there's on your own website, you talk about, like, you know, some thematically, the lyrics do kind of matter to you. You kind of are addressing some things, not necessarily to be specifically profound, but they're not throwaway lyrics. You're not just making sure there's a rhyme.
Well, I mean, for me, the albums, there was a need for them, right? Because I was, here I am doing all this stuff, like being in Night Ranger and Whitesnake and TSO and even Rock of Ages, and people are buying my solo albums, and you can see why they would be like, do you have any rock solo albums? You know, when you like Undefined or my Acoustic CD, and you know, so all that stuff was kind of like, how come you don't have any solo albums like that? That's just rock stuff. And I always did want to do that anyway. I mean, I always thought I'll definitely do a few, like, you know, just classic rock albums, but I come from a standpoint on it more like, this is like the songs that I would have wanted to listen to in the 80s, more than like, check out my guitar playing still. It's not really, so for me, the guitar solos remain kind of, you know, decent length. It's not like, you know, overplaying and 3-minute guitar solos and all that stuff. And again, that's why I gave it the project name. But for me, this was an opportunity to have the opportunity to write everything. When you're a part of some of the bigger bands, of course, you know, I'm not going to go into Night Ranger when I'm in that band and go like, hey guys, I've got the album all written. You know, you guys have seen the movie Rockstar. You know how that works out, right? So, I mean, you know, and that's no critique on them, but whatever those bands allow you to do, you're lucky, because they spent 30 years or whatever building their brand name. So, you know, that's all, it's all good on my end with that. It's definitely not a complaint, but it's fun to be able to be the person who writes the melody, what the singer will sing, and the lyrics and everything, which is what I do on these albums. So for me, that's really great, and also I get to be the person to call the shots on the mix and the way it should sound and really produce it. So I guess in that regard, that's what it's about for me, more than the shred thing. So yeah, you're talking about the lyrics, but it's kind of everything song related for me. That's what it's about, having the opportunity to just put out like a couple good rock albums, man, you know, and like not trying to be progressive on them at all. Like no odd time signatures really, maybe like, you know, one tiny one here or there or something by accident, but there's really no trying to be progressive and not trying to shred everybody's face off on them either. It's just like, you know, like what did we grow up listening to? We grew up listening, so let me do like a version of that, but for 2021.
Yeah, well, you achieve that in spades. What I love about the records is, kind of in every position, you have these great musicians, and you put these compositions together, and there's care. I feel like you can kind of hear the care in you know, in each discipline. I don't know if do you literally do the drum programming and all of that, or do you leave a little bit of latitude to your players?
No, I leave a lot of latitude for the players actually. So that's where it gets fun for them, and that's where, you know, you prove that you're somebody who's actually done sessions yourself by just letting people do whatever the hell they want. So I basically track the scratch guitars to a click, and then I'll usually, for Vinny Appice and Tony Franklin, they'll hear me on guitar playing what the singer's going to sing as well. Okay. And then once I get their tracks back, that's when I'll actually write all the lyrics. There'll typically be a chorus I'll have lyrics for each one. But then I'll write all the lyrics to those melodies and sing a guide vocal for Russell. And that's what Russell hears. Russell hears me singing the album, and then he just sings it a whole lot better than I would. So, but in terms of like, if there's something that Russ wants to tweak, if he wants to change, you know, they can totally do that. And Vinny, basically, I don't tell Vinny anything. I mean, he can just play whatever he wants. That's what makes people interested in doing it. So, yeah, I mean, I just, you hire good players and just let them do their thing. But the songs themselves, like, you know, the melodies and the chord changes or riffs and the lyrics, that's all coming from me. But how people perform them, that's, you know, hey, man, you know, just get good players.
Will we, you know, with given all of your other commitments, will we ever get to see that on stage or on any sort of tour?
We did play a gig on the Monsters of Rock cruise in support of Dying to Live. And now with running games, it seems that even more people are interested in it. So, you know, once we get things open enough to have it make any kind of sense, I'll give it a go. It's going to be interesting because everybody's going to want to get out at the same time.
Yeah, it's going to
over this next year. So we'll see. But I would definitely love to do that, and I still love to do another one of the albums as well. So I think people can look forward to another.
Yeah, I think they were really well received. Your record label, I think, has built a lot of credibility for putting out, you know, records generally in that genre. I hope they supported you well with this, because they're both really, really, really good records. On the last record, I don't know why, maybe it's just the headspace I've been in, but the song that I love, the title track to Running Games. I love the sort of Spanish guitar thing, the sort of the percussion, which is like all kinds of percussion, is you know, not big drum fills. There's nice cello stylings you've got in there. I think you used a cello player from Evanescence, or
yeah, my friend Dave Egger. So he played on my acoustic CD that you mentioned a while back, and then so Dave and I have been friends ever since. And then he, because he plays with so many of the pop and rock bands and does their arrangements and their stuff, he really ended up doing a lot of work with Amy Lee from Evanescence. So he luckily like suggested me to her to come in and play on a song on her. It was for a movie soundtrack, but it ended up on her solo album as well. So that's where I got to meet Amy, and she's just great. She's so cool. She was such a nice lady, woman, whatever I'm supposed to say. I'm looking for the proper term, but she's got. Well, I feel like chick is derogatory. I don't want to say chick, but she's awesome. And that the whole band, Evanescence, those guys are all great. I love Jen too, their guitar player. She's just such a positive person. and we've become friends. And Will, their drummer, is awesome. And so, yeah, I have a good friendship with those guys. I went to one of their shows when we had a day off, I think in Indianapolis, and I was able to go, and they treated me like $1,000,000. They had me back and treated me like I was a member of the band, and I just felt, it's like, wow, these guys are just class, so nice. And but yeah, to get back to Frontiers, Frontiers does a great job, I think, of getting it all out there. They have a great network, like, lined up, ready to roll, because they've done so much of it, releasing records in our genre. So I think that they they do a good job. Nick Teeter does a great job with the marketing, and I go way back with those guys. I mean, I go back to the Night Ranger albums I was a part of with them. So I've been friends with Serafino and Mario there since 2011. So we go back. We've been working together 10 years basically. So, but yeah, they do a great job of getting it out there. So props to those guys for sure. And yeah.
Well, these records, for folks who are with us, these last two albums that Joel's put together, they really are good. I don't use a hyperbole when I'm talking about them. If you dig 70s and 80s really good heavy rock, it fires on all pistons, which was what I was trying to articulate before with all the various disciplines. He's got these great players. He's written these great songs. People who know me know that lyrical content matters to me. We don't have time to get into it, but it's not throwaway here, even though they're delivered in the context of really cool rock songs. There's some meat inside the lyrical content, which I think is cool. So props there, because that's a bias of mine. The last thing I want to mention is you've been in a couple of these shred compilations. They're linked to from your website, so folks will be able to get to them. And I wanted to tell you that everybody on those they're consummate players. One of the things that I like about your playing is, in addition to having the facility to move all over the neck and do all the things, you have a way of phrasing and giving a melody or a solo kind of a shape. And even when I was watching, in fact, I was watching them earlier today, those solo compilations, for me, your solo sections they really kind of rise apart. They're so good. And I think this is one of the things maybe that I wanted to be sure that I got a chance to tell you, is that, I know that people know you for having the showmanship and having a lot of facility on the instrument. But there's a musicality to your playing that I think is the reason why people want to have you involved. I'm going to encourage people to go to your site and look at just the sheer number of musicians that have, just like you've said during COVID, have said, they want you to come and guest. It's a credit to your playing. I mean, I don't know, I'm very happy that you do what you do so that we get to partake of it.
Well, hey man, thank you so much. I guess a couple of those, my friend Kate Devon asked me to do a couple of those, and those shred compilations, and
they're for charity, I think.
So I've never done one of those before, and it's astounding to me that there's this whole scene out there that being, I'm like the old guy on there, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, here comes grandpa coming in, it's like all these young guys who are amazingly technical, and have a following in their own way with that stuff. It's crazy, like the amount of people that view those, and so that's like a whole scene, and I wasn't even aware of that. So I look at that like it's cool, just from the standpoint of that I could hang with them, because I haven't really been barking up that tree for a while. So for me to be able to even get in there and not get totally embarrassed is I consider cool, man. I honestly, like the first one, because when you do those, it's like a track, and you just do a solo. You don't hear like what all the other soloists are doing or see them, and so you don't know what to expect. But I have to admit, that first one I watched, some of those guys were I was like, I mean, it's amazing the technique that's out there in this world nowadays, man. It's amazing that YouTube can bring that stuff to us and see the way some of these younger guys are playing coming up. It's awesome. You know, I mean, I think it's great. Whatever keeps people interested in music and playing it, I always think is a positive. You know, it's real easy to critique all these current outlets, you know, say like the vocal shows like The Voice or American Idol or something like that. But the silver lining to that, once again, just like this COVID stuff, you try and find the silver lining, is that it makes kids want to sing, right? So, I mean, if you're a little kid and you're watching American Idol, now, is it as cool as, you know, back in the day you got in a band and you played 4 or 5 shows a week? And, you know, no, of course not. But like, you know, I think it's great that it's keeping people interested in music, you know, and keeping kids interested in it. So I try to look at the positive side with all that stuff, including those shred compilations. I think that's, you know, it's great that there's a scene, there's a community there.
There is, yeah, and you're right. A lot of those young guitarists, they have a lot of followers on their YouTube channels, and they're very supportive of each other. You know, I think that the shred compilation, you know, is evidence of that, and the fact that it's for charity, and you get to see a lot of different styles. What I liked about listening to it is there's a lot of variety. Maybe it's just a sensibility of my own, but I believe you do have this ability to use the technique in service of like a musicality inside the music. And this is one of the reasons I also wanted to have you on the show, is because anything I can do from my corner to try and draw people to it, I think I want to do. So the parting question is, what's next for you, man? I mean, obviously we had to wait for COVID to find out about touring, but can you talk to us about, I mean, there's so many projects that got announced. You working with Michael Sweet and Nathan James. There's a bunch of things. Is there any of that stuff you can talk to us about that's coming up?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the point with that project right there that I'm probably going to track the guitars fairly soon. So that's coming up for me. I seem to always have like a set amount of sessions that I need to do, you know, right now I have 4 songs waiting that I have to play on, and that's in addition to my teaching week. And I said, you know, my typical week is teaching, which I have 32 students a week right now, sessions and cameos. That's pretty much like my work week right now. You know, I'm like a day job guy with that, and go after it. But and then get the other stuff done as well. But it's just work hard, man, and then see where it all takes us, right? So, I mean, I'd love to. It would be really great to get back out there with TSO this November, December. My fingers are cemented, crossed for that, to be able to get back out there, and then to get back out there with Whitesnake. Obviously, it would be amazing. But regardless, it's just to work hard, man, and keep doing, you know, whether it's more of these collaboration videos with people, or writing with people, or playing on songs. I just always have musical projects every single day, something that's happening and something to move me forward. I mean, today I taught 6 lessons. I've been with my guitar 6 hours today, and then do this, talk with you. And so it's just the ability to feel like at the end of the day that, yeah, I was productive. You know, I can lay my head down on the pillow and go, all right, I didn't just lay around all day and do nothing.
Well, that no one's ever going to accuse you of resting on your laurels. There was a cool song I saw you did with Tony Harnell for something that's a project called Echo Bats, which is like this really cool, also different style of music. At least that song was the one that the video I saw. There's been mention of some stuff you might do with Inglorious, work with Chris Caffery. You were on Mother's Rain, or the Alter Rain record, with a song called Mother's Day. So you're a busy guy, and I'm glad you are. All of this music is really, really good. We'll include some links so people can get to this stuff if they haven't heard about it.
Cool. Right on. Thank you.
But thank you, sir. It's been great talking to you. I'll leave you to your evening, but all the best, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for all the kind words, and have a nice night. Thanks for thinking of me, and I'll catch you down the road. Hopefully we can hang backstage at one show soon. Someday
you come through with Whitesnake, I'll be there. I'm on the West Coast, so you don't come out here with TSO.
Okay, yeah.
Someday we'll get to shake hands and
backstage Whitesnake, dude.
There you
Book
go.
it.
All right, dude.
All right, man. All right, dude. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Cheers.